Welcome everyone, my name's Sarah Graham and this is my colleague and good fellow. We are both academic liaison librarians in the University of Sydney Library. Today we're going to talk about strategies for increasing research impact outside of academic measures of impact. We acknowledge that there will be staff from a range of disciplines and you will all be at different points in your career. Most of the information that we're providing is general in nature, but we also recognise that some strategies are more or less important depending on the discipline that you come from and also your stage of career. I also want to mention that the slides and the presentation will be available on YouTube after the session happens, so probably in a couple of days, early next week. In the first half of the talk, I'm going to be clarifying the amorphous concept of research impact, why there has been a shift from outputs to impact, and distill some of the messages from the government briefing papers and reports. In the second half, my colleague Anne will be talking about strategies for increasing research impact and identifying tools that will assess whether activities promoting research outputs have been effective. In the first definition that you see on the screen, which comes from the Australian Research Council, and the second is from the UK equivalent, the Higher Education Funding Council for England. They're very similar and allow us to move forward with a definition of research impact as an identifiable benefit to or positive influence on the economy, society, public policy, or services, culture, the environment, and quality of life. Before we get too far into the weeds here, I want to talk about some of the acronyms that are used and just acknowledge that higher education is full of acronyms. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'm going to describe some of them. So the ARC is the Australian Research Council, the government arm that assesses research in Australia. The ERA stands for Excellence in Research for Australia, which is Australia's National Research Evaluation Framework. NISA, National Innovation and Science Agenda, which is a government initiative which was launched in 2015 and announced that the first research evaluation exercise that includes impact will be in 2018. HEFCE, H-E-F-C-E, that is the UK public body responsible for distributing funding to universities, so slightly more high level than the ARC, but a very similar type of organisation. Excuse me. And REF stands for Research Evaluation Framework, which is the evaluation exercise that occurred in the UK and was the first national evaluation exercise to include research impact outside of academia. Excuse me. The interest in understanding the links between research, innovation and societal development is not new, and neither is the search for appropriate methods to assess the impact of research. In the last few years, however, there has been a growing pressure from the political sphere to measure and achieve value for money for investments in research. At an overarching level, it's possible to make a distinction between academic consequences and societal consequences of research. Academic consequences being publications, collaborations, creating national and international networks, training of future researchers and other professionals, and participation in peer review. It obviously also includes new ways of thinking and new research questions and discipline-shifting knowledge. Societal consequences include addressing issues such as why society gains in the form of better products, better services, healthier lives, better welfare, as well as increasing understanding of ideas and attitudes, values and beliefs. Therefore, impact on society can include every important aspect of society. And it's important to recognise that the definitions of research engagement and impact adopted may advantage some disciplines over others. Some definitions may also lead to more emphasis on short-term or applied or business-focused research over the longer-term public benefits of more fundamental research. The intangible nature of some social benefits of research also makes quantification difficult, and so qualitative approaches based on narrative explanations of the benefits of research projects have been advocated to overcome this. Why are we looking at an emphasis, changing emphasis on research impact? So in Australia, the next Excellence in Research for Australia is going to be conducted in 2018 with a pilot in 2017. Even though we're still receiving, they're still receiving feedback from stakeholders, it's pretty clear that economic value will play a significant part in that exercise. It's also likely that the exercise will also assess socio-economic impact in addition to economic impact. Consultation with key stakeholders, so that's the higher education sector, industry and other users or beneficiaries of university research, is still in process. Challenges the ARC has said it's looking at include the difficulties of identifying impacts beyond academia and the significant time delays between research and impact, balancing data collection and the difficulties of ensuring that no discipline is disadvantaged by the assessment. We can definitely learn a few things from the UK experience because the 2014 REF was the first time that impact outside of academia was assessed. While we still don't know what the ERA exercise will look like exactly, there are some useful lessons we can draw from the UK experience. The first place to go to when you're looking at the UK's Research Excellence Framework is this database called REF Impact Case Studies. So you can see every case study that was submitted as part of the REF exercise in this database. And it allows you to look by discipline or by keyword. Now, some disciplines have an advantage when demonstrating impact. For example, patents are highly applicable to certain fields and types of research. I've already mentioned that qualitative approaches based on narrative explanations of benefits will be more important in order to manage disciplinary differences. So in the UK's REF 2014 exercise, the case study method was deliberately chosen as a way of managing disciplinary differences. Publications analysing these case studies have also started sprouting and give you an interesting insight into some of the pathways used. This list is some of the examples of indicators of impact addressed in the 2014 exercise and how they're categorised. So the main categories are social, cultural, policy and economic. So here are some examples that might start you thinking about your own work and your own discipline and how you might start to think about impact and move forward. This shows a table that the ARC has released called a research impact pathway. It provides high-level examples from the research pipeline and indicates where they would normally sit on the pathway to impact. So we see inputs, research income becoming activities, outputs, publications, etc. becoming outcomes. And in this case, impacts is expressed as benefits. So you can see that they're thinking about a broad effect on society here. But it's really important to note that this conceptual framework of outputs, outcomes and impacts is portrayed as a linear process. Basic research translates into applied research and finally into social and technical innovations. This is a bit problematic because sometimes impact relates to the final outcome and sometimes it doesn't. And it's also impossible to know if an impact is a final outcome. So I just want to start with some sort of problems about thinking about research impact and the amorphous idea of impact on society. Impact is not necessarily predictable and therefore strategies for fostering and developing impact cannot be considered reliable. Also, some of the tools that we're going to discuss are not necessarily about increasing research impact per se, but are ways of measuring whether your activities promoting your research have been effective. So now I'm going to pass over to my colleague Anne, who's going to talk you through some specific strategies.
Okay, so moving along after that disclaimer that it's, in terms of measuring impact and if you can gauge if it's tangible and real, I'm going to look at what has worked. So considering the emphasis is shifting from outputs, so things traditionally seen as the number of citations for a work or the number of publications by a researcher, to impacts, so that is how your research demonstrably contributes to society through economic, policy or cultural changes, for instance. What can you do in practical terms? So that is to increase your profile as a researcher, to encourage engagement with your research, and to positively influence its potential impact. So we've identified 5 key themes that you can see. So have a plan, focus on your audience, develop a publishing strategy that includes sharing your research beyond academia, and ensure you and your research is findable. So given that each of these topics could easily be a quick bite, and some of them are, I'm really skimming the surface. So there'll be a few tips and tools to get you started. And to state the obvious, the first thing to do is have a plan. However, I'm not going to talk about the obvious, which is research planning stages. So I want you to think about the context of your research, the state of your researcher profile, and the extent of your current network. Why? Because studies have shown that collaborating and publishing with others can raise your profile, your institution's visibility. It can lead to more citations and hence to possible impacts, as well as future funding and collaborative opportunities. So you may have heard about the 3-minute thesis competition, where participants have to pitch their research within 180 seconds. I'd like you to think about your current research. How does it connect to the wider disciplinary conversation? And what impact will your research have outside academia? Could you answer in less than 3 minutes? It's good practice, because being able to create a strong link and narrative between your research and possible impact factors will help you to build your profile, connect to potential collaborators and audiences, and influence the decisions you make along the way, such as the kind of researcher profiles and networking sites you want to engage with. And I've listed some of the main ones here. So at an institutional level, the university offers academic profiles as well as higher degree by research student profiles. There are also specific publisher profiles. So these are Elsevier with Scopus and Thomson Reuters with Web of Science. So you can manually register for a researcher ID. However, you need to have published in a journal that's indexed by Scopus to get a Scopus ID. And ORCID is different again. It's not affiliated to any one organisation. It provides a free, permanent digital identifier for any researcher regardless of discipline, and links all their profiles in one central location. And I'll provide a few more details later. There are also free academic networking sites, and you may be familiar with these. ResearchGate is popular for science disciplines, and academic.edu is, whilst it's for all disciplines, it's more humanities focused. So these sites allow you to create a profile, share and discuss your research, view usage statistics, and track the research of others, as well as to connect and collaborate. You may not be as familiar with Pyrrhus. Have a look at it though. It was developed as a result of the University of Warwick identifying that connecting researchers at the earliest stages of a research idea is a universal problem. So basically, it aims to help researchers identify and connect with collaborators across all disciplines, countries, and sectors. And finally, we've got other networking profiles. So Google may already be indexing your work. So creating a Google Scholar profile can help you track it. And it's particularly useful for humanities where outputs don't neatly fit with traditional citation metrics. And of course, it's another way to make your research findable, discoverable to a wider audience, as is publishing in the conversation or connecting via Mendeley, and as is social media. So social media, so it's a powerful immediate tool that can engage your colleagues, collaborators and communities, and also assist you to promote and increase traffic around your research. So for instance, you can publish your research, you could blog about your research, you could then tweet about that research to get it out to a broader audience. I've also included LinkedIn, but I realise this isn't necessarily relevant to all disciplines. It is if you're in business as a way to engage with industry partners. So be strategic. Find out what is relevant in your discipline. Maintain 1 or 2 up-to-date profiles and networks that work for you. Okay, so moving on. One of the quickest ways to consider the possible impact of your research is to start with your audience. So you may be able to start with a problem that needs to be solved and build your research around that. Or you might be able to relate your research to solving a known problem, and that's going to make it easier for you to demonstrate the impact of your research. So essentially, you're considering who's going to be interested in what you're doing, what aspects of your research do you think they'll engage with, and how might they use their research, your research. And to determine who's going to benefit the most, you can look at what others have done in your field, what audiences were targeted, and what evidence is available for how they've engaged. And I've included this particular site. It's a UK site, Fast Track Impact. It's got some really great free resources. It's got a stakeholder analysis template. So this can help you identify a potential audience. It also has, as you can see on the slides, what these are good practice examples of impact case studies. So the UK is ahead of us, and this is a list of exemplars from the 2014 REF exercise that the UK have done. It covers disciplines from agriculture to engineering to law to languages to performing arts. So it covers a broad range of disciplines. And you can click on and view how those disciplines have written about impact in those areas. Okay, so you probably already know about high impact factor journals to publish in. I'm not going to cover those. However, if you're thinking about social impact rather than research outputs, it's important to consider who are you reaching with your publishing strategy, and is that the audience that you need to reach? And if so, if you're thinking beyond academia, open access publishing options should be on your radar, as evidence shows citations to articles made freely accessible are discovered and cited more than just research published in journals alone. Now, this is a huge topic in and of itself, so at this point I'm going to plug the services of your academic librarian and recommend that you contact them to find out more, as publishers have different open access options, and your librarian can discuss these in more depth, and they can also recommend tools to help you, such as one specific one is Sherpa Romeo, which is a searchable database of publishers' policies. And I'll also give a plug that there's an upcoming authors' rights and open access quick bite that you might be interested in as well. The slide just shows you some of the benefits that you can get from publishing in open access. So higher citation rates, and specifically about the public getting access to your findings. So getting out from behind a paywall. Another great way to share your research is to publish a commentary or opinion piece in The Conversation. It ticks all the right boxes. It's independent, not-for-profit. It's a media outlet that uses content sourced from the academic and research community. And essentially, you're writing in a more accessible style and translating or relating your research to real-world situations. And in this particular piece, Oliver Watts, an academic at the Sydney College of the Arts, is writing about the Cirrus building at Circular Quay, which is due to be demolished. And you can see on your right-hand side with the red oval that that's been picked up, and there's engagement, for instance, on Facebook with over 2,000 mentions. So some of the statistics from this site, just to emphasise its reach, there were 3.3 million users on the site. 82 of those readers are non-academic. There's an even split between genders. And that particular audience is highly engaged. 65 share what they read on social media, and 21 comment on an article. And this is an important two-way discussion because, like Twitter, you can find out what your audience thinks in this arena and how they're actually engaging with your ideas and research. And if that doesn't entice you enough, after writing an article, 55% of the authors were contacted by media, and there's different percentages, so that's to give, including business consultations, 11% to collaborate with other researchers, and 14% to speak at a conference. So that's really extending your reach outside academia. And to add further weight, in a recent government, so it's an engagement and impact assessment consultation paper, they've specifically mentioned the importance of altmetrics, which I'll cover briefly in a minute, and The Conversation as important measures and possible measures of impact in disciplines where harder evidence isn't necessarily available. Okay, so our last point is to make your research and you trackable and findable. So I've already mentioned ORCID. Here's a snapshot of, so Chris Hillard, an academic in the history department. So to give you a snapshot of what it looks like, it's free and easy to register. I suggest you have your CV in hand as you do it. And you can see, so Chris has his ORCID ID. So on the left upper side in green, it shows you what an ID looks like. Now this is a snapshot. It doesn't include everything that's covered in this profile. It's just to give you an idea. And you'll see as you scroll down the column that all the other IDs, so his researcher IDs are linked in, so Scopus and researcher IDs. So the great thing about this is it's a persistent digital identifier you get. It's unique to you. If you change institutions and move, then it will go with you. It ensures that you can get proper attribution to your research and that it's discoverable. And it's also integrated with lots of other IDs. And importantly, it gives you control because it's yours. So you can decide what you want to highlight, what you don't. You can hide some of your publications if you want to, and you can share it in particular ways. Okay, so just a quick mention of altmetrics, so alternate metrics. So these are mentions in blog posts, bookmarks, tweets, shares on Facebook, or mentions in the newspaper. These can give you an idea about how your research is being used and the broader audience that it might be reaching. And I've included, so this is a free altmetric bookmarklet that you can download from this particular site. It's by a company called Digital Science. So as you can see from the slide, you can quickly grab and just drag it onto your toolbar. And when you find an article that you'd like to see alternate metrics for, you can simply click the tab and it will display what's available. However, it doesn't work all the time because it needs a unique document identifier to work. So, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. So I found this particular article by Professor David Isaacs, affiliated with the University of Sydney, and it shows in Scopus that it's been cited twice as of today. And if I want to see how that's been engaged in other ways, if I click on the alt metric, so the tool on my toolbar, it comes up with, it's called a donut. So the donut is different colours, and you can see that these colours relate to specific forms of social media and show the engagement. So in this case, it's been picked up by 2 news outlets. It's been tweeted by 20 people and has a mention on Facebook. I can click through to find more details, and these are included in the summary, so they're tabs at the top of the site. So summary, news, Twitter and Facebook. And it says under Twitter that, for instance, this article has been actually tweeted 24 times in different languages, because I checked, from 2 users, and it's reaching over 47,000 followers. It also includes that at least 55% of the engagement with this article has been from members of the public. So you can see if this was your published article, these statistics can help you start to create a narrative around engagement, and you can start looking at who's particularly engaged with you and the possible impact that you may have had beyond. Okay, so lastly, I'm just going to mention this is a different product. The university's research office has a license for Plum Analytics, so stay tuned for more information about this. So Plum measures it measures 5 categories of metrics. 2 of them are traditional, usage and citation, and 3 of them are more modern or alt metrics. So these are captures, mentions, and social media. And I've just given you a snapshot, so you can see here on the right side that it can look at your research and it will give you a breakdown of where there's been engagement. And interestingly enough, so it's called PlumX, it also links to ORCID IDs. So the connection is that once you have an ORCID ID, you could also automatically get a display of your research in that way. Okay, so that's basically it. Okay, thank you very much. So as Sarah pointed out, this will hopefully be up. We've got a lot of references at the end of our slides. So if you want more information, you can check those out. And by all means, you're welcome to contact us as well, or your relevant academic librarian.
Thank you.